Meanwhile, Finance Minister of India Nirmala Sitharaman has on the floor of India's Parliament clarified on the recent questions raised on LIC's investments. In October, the Washington Post had alleged that the Finance Ministry officials are orchestrating a plan to steer LIC into investing in the Adani Group earlier this year. The FM has clarified that number one, the Finance Ministry does not issue any advisory to LIC with matters related to investment. Secondly, investment decisions are taken by LIC alone following strict due diligence. Thirdly, such decisions are governed by the provisions of the Insurance Act 1938. They've also stated that LIC has invested Rs 5,000 crore in secured non-convertible debt indentures issued by APSEZ in May 2025. LIC has also invested in the top 500 companies listed on NSE and BSE, and periodical inspections are also done by the sector IRDAI in this record. There is no direct oversight by the government on investments made by LIC. As a matter of fact, LIC's exposure to Adani Group is less than 2% of the conglomerate's total debt. LIC has invested around Rs 31,000 crores in Adani companies since 2017, and the current value of that investment is Rs 65,000 crores. LIC's investment in Reliance too has been a 30-year investment. The total portfolio spans 300 plus top Indian companies, including Reliance, Tata, NTPC, ONGC, L&T, ICICI, SBI, and dozens of others. Over the past decade, LIC's equity portfolio has grown from Rs 1.5 lakh crores to Rs 15.5 lakh crores, which is tenfold. The bottom line is that LIC is an institution that manages Rs 55 lakh crore of India's savings. So any Hitjobs, specifically the one that was done by Washington Post, can prove to be rather vicious. But what does this truly now indicate? My colleagues, Sumit Peer, political commentator, joining us on the broadcast, is also Dr. Jayjeet Bhattacharya as well. Let me begin with Dr. Jayjeet Bhattacharya. Dr. Bhattacharya, what do you make of the Finance Ministry's clarifications as far as this case is concerned?
It is what it is. The Finance Ministry is not in the business of directing the PSEs into doing what they need to do or not do. The LIC, as was rightly pointed out, is governed by the Insurance Act of 1938, and therefore LIC will do what's best in the interest of its own shareholders. And in that, it is obvious that they will be investing into companies which will grow as India grows. So investing into entities such as Adani, Reliance, Infosys, Tata's, TCS, which will grow as India grows, it's an obvious bet. And therefore, the return that comes from it will be helpful to LIC shareholders. Also, in addition, it's quite curious to note, why does Washington Post off and on goes after Adani sitting in Washington? What does it have to do, and what are its interests in trying to corner Adani, trying to corner the Indian government? They should focus on what Trump is doing, and they should focus on how, without any reason, Trump has been murdering innocent people in Venezuela by bombing them without any due diligence. Instead of focusing on their issues which are near shore, they're suddenly picking up on the key companies of India. 50% of our containerized cargo is handled by Adani. Adani is almost 5% of India's GDP. So is Reliance. So are many other companies. And therefore, trying to attack an Adani or any such large corporate in India is akin to attacking the Indian economy itself. And it's very, very curious to note as to why they are repeatedly attacking Adani without any rationale from a Washington perspective or from a US perspective. And so coming back to your question, well, does the Finance Ministry have any role to play in directing where an LIC should be investing? The answer clearly is a no. And LIC will invest in areas which make sense for its shareholders.
All right, stay on with me. Sumit Peer also with us on the broadcast. Sumit, your views on the same now, this pertinent clarification that has come in.
Thanks for having me on your show, Devika ji. Well, to begin with, it was always clear. Now, Nirmala ji has cleared it on the House of the Parliament. Look, The opposition is looking and brewing and trying to make a scam out of something. They're looking to put the pieces together to make an illusion and delusion to make a scam. There's a very organized cabal which is at work, and Washington Post is a part of the cabal. You see, at the right point of time, before the G20, they publish an article, and before the session of the parliament, they come up with something like this. At the end of the day, whatever LIC is doing is their business. They are being audited every year. They are showing revenue. They are managing assets worth $500 billion. And now, if you look at the biggest, if you're Reliance there, if you're Adani there, you have HDFC there also. You have Infosys there, and you have TCS there. Then you have SBI there, you have ICICI Bank also there. So it is not the money is only going to this part, and it's 2% of the total exposure. So if that is 2% of the total exposure, I don't know how does it become a news for Washington Post? What really baffles Washington Post? Washington Post should be bothered about in every 69 days, there is $1 trillion of debt which America is increasing. With every second is $100,000 of debt they're increasing. When I was talking, $500,000 of debt or maybe more than that has been accumulated. They have to talk about the dollar is kind of depleting. They have to talk about, the people are not putting money in the US Treasury bonds. You have to talk about how did Trump go and scrap 92% of whatever Joe Biden signed. So these are the things what should be their focus area. They should be bothered about their home. They should be bothered about what is happening within the America, the anarchy which is happening within the America. But again, this is paid PR. This is Hitjobs, wherein they are trying to cast aspersions. Look, if you look at the Asian Power Index, now India is rated number 3. Number 1 is America, number 2 is China, number 3 is us. So we have come to that 40-point stage where you are seen as a superpower. Now, even with the investments coming to India after America, we are the number second, we're the biggest destination in the world after America. Now, with all these things coming in, and our company is doing very well, it's a matter of time we'll be the third biggest economy by GDP. By PPP, we are already there. So these kind of hit jobs, pre-planned, engineered, dissonances basically are done to bring down the investor confidence. Look, there were allegations by Mr. Rahul Gandhi about LIC and all that. That year, LIC had the best ever result. So, we know how these things are planned. They're all done. They're all orchestrated. And unfortunately, the people like them have no accountability. They can still walk and go away. And they are all those loss-making organizations. There is somebody who is putting money every month to keep them up and running. The question is, why are people burning good money to keep them alive? Because they have this propaganda value. They have this value where they can, kind of shake the governments, when they can, steer trouble. Is it untrue, Devkaji? It is official. CIA has dismantled or changed 59 governments in the world. I mean, how do they do it? These are the people who act as the tools. They're the people who create scams, who make illusions, who swing the public opinion, and then eventually the things start hitting the road. Point here is that, when you look at the investment portfolio, it is quite solid, it is quite diversified. And if it is the 2% of the total lendings what I have, where on earth, by which law of economics, accounting or mathematics, your 2% of the holdings is your doomsday? If it was 30-40% with Adani, then you could still argue, okay, by it is 40%, anything can go wrong. How does 2% make wrong? How does 2% risk LIC? Why should Nirmala ji intervene and tell him, okay, inko 2% do? Now, for example, let me take out Adani. If you don't want to invest in Adani, you don't want to invest in Ambani, now you don't want to invest in TCS, you don't want to invest in HDFC Bank, you don't want to put money in Infosys. Now, where are you going to put money? You're not going to put money in Sumitpir Incorporated for sure. So these are the companies where the big money is put, and these are the companies where the returns are. I mean, where do you expect LIC to put this money in? This is a catch-22 situation wherein they are trying to create something. They are trying their level best to create something, and Nirmala ji's statement and clarification in the parliament it settles the issue. There is nothing to be done unless and until you want to create an imaginary scam out of it. But the problem is that the numbers are not with you. 2% will not make a big story. I mean, you have tried it before and all that and all that. So they know the SIR issue is dying. So what is the new issue? So this can be the possible new issue which they will use to make sure the parliament doesn't function. Because they will have those list of 5-7 things. Achha, this is settled, this is settled. Okay, let me pull this, let me pull this. This is what is happening, Devkaji. Logically, there is nothing in this. There is nothing. They're doing fantastically well. Look at how LIC has grown over the last 10 years, 11 years. So who takes the credit for that? And you are auditing them every year. They have all the checks, balances, and SOPs in place. Have you found anything which is worrying? Is there a red flag in the audit? Is there any default in the payments? Has Adani defaulted once? Where are the red flags? Where are the issues? I mean, if I want to go further into that, there are a lot of things which we can talk, but they will become very technical. The point here is that It is a political hitman's job wherein you want to imaginarily create another scam in India. You are envious of LIC because I think this is the only company which is managing around $500 billion of assets. And eventually, India is coming up and able to sustain and look into the financial needs of its own industry by its own resources. That is where the problem is. If you have to go back to a Chase Manhattan, you have to go back to a BlackRock, you have to go back to a, all these Firang banks and Firang asset management companies, then it is all okay. Then Washington Post will just keep silent about it. But when the Indian biggies are able to be funded by an Indian company from the India's money and they are doing fantastically well, so obviously takleef to kahin na kahin hogi. That is where you see all this drama coming up, and that is where you see all these cooked up stories coming up. Can somebody ask Washington Post, how does 2% of the exposure make it a global news? Bhai takleef kahan hai? Where is the problem? Batao.
Yes, but Jayajit Bhattacharya, do you think that there are some, or is there a need for any specific auditable records that can be perhaps provided to further counter these external allegations that Finance Ministry officials were nudging LIC in May 2025 towards their investment in Adani? Or do we just accept the Finance Ministry's clarification and not give this more time and space than it requires?
For a large corporation like NIC, like LIC, it is always helpful to be more transparent. It is always helpful to put more records out there. But I think the challenge essentially is that there is a continuous stream of allegations coming in, directed towards Adani's, directed towards our fundamental organizations such as LIC, SBI, and so on and so forth, which distracts the top management from actually focusing on growth and then moving on to trying to protect themselves and therefore losing valuable quarters in focusing on responding to such allegations which just do not have any base. Having said that, again, for a large corporation, it is always good to be as transparent as possible. LIC, Adani, which is a listed, the parts of Adani which are listed, have been transparent as per the SEBI law. Same with LIC. And if there is a demand for more transparency, it should come from India based on requirements and challenges from an Indian lens, an Indian perspective. It is quite galling to note that something that's cropping up 10,000 miles away in a yellow newspaper called Washington Post, which has a track record of coming out with news and narrations which are against the global south, which is against India, and that is being given that's been given so much of significance in the parliament, burning taxpayers' money, picking up an issue which is not even an issue which connects with the voters. So why is the opposition even picking it up? Pollution is an issue. Pollution is not being picked up with the same gusto that this particular issue is being picked up. And that has happened year after year, parliament session after parliament session. When we are wasting the parliament sessions and the bandwidth of the parliament, we are slowing down the progress of this country. And that's what is really galling all of us, that a baseless allegation by a yellow journalism newspaper is taking up and eating into our bandwidth, eating up into our legislative process, taking up our legislators' time, taking up the time of the top management of our key organizations. That is not acceptable. Having said that, again, as I said, more transparency, the better it is. But let it not be for the wrong reasons. It should be for the right reasons.
Okay, all right. On that note, I thank both of our guests for joining us to take this debate forward.